Welcome y'all to the Blackhoof Saloon, a Wild West Exodus podcast. Mosey on up to the bar and get yourself a bottle of firewater or a glass of sarsaparilla and listen to some good old yarns about adventures of law dogs, outlaws, and weird creatures. So set a spell, water your ride or your rider, and get ready to tune up your posses. This is the Blackhoof Saloon.
Howdy, Sidewinders, and welcome back to the Blackhoof Saloon, a Wild West Exodus podcast. This is Eric here, and we are back for another episode of Fun in the Saloon. I have with me Tom out on the East Coast. Say hello, Tom. Where did Tom go?
Oh crap! I had my thing muted. You got a yeehaw out of me.
Oh! Do it again. I can edit.
What? When you go, hey Tom, I go, yeehaw!
There's Tom. And I also have Brian with me. Say hey, Brian.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
No yeehaw from you?
Yeehaw! No doggies!
All right, today's episode, we are going to be kind of talking about some segments. Our main topic, I think we're going to talk about some fortune and spending it. And then we're going to have some fun, I think, with a little bit of different topic. The three of us came up with like our top three dudes in the game that we'd like to just go over. For one reason or another, we picked them.
Hey Eric, I know you went to GenCon this summer. Why don't you give us a little brief description of what happened? I think you even got some questions that you were posting to Stuart regarding GenCon.
Yes. I did just recently get back from GenCon at Indianapolis and got to hang out with the Warcradle gang for a day. I was only able to get down there for a day, but they were out there with their big old booth and they had a bunch of stuff on display, and we had some listeners ask me to ask some questions, so I kind of picked some of their brain, and I'll admit I kind of got glossed over with all the shiny stuff and the big old display with the boat that Rob did for their booth. But some of the new stuff that they had in display that was kind of cool to see in the cases was they had, like, we've seen the Dixie Resurrection was there. They had that on display. We've seen the Dark Nation posse set was there on display. But then we got to see the Ranger Showboat was out on display, and they had that actually on the new upcoming saloon that they're going to have up for pre-order actually this coming month. And talking to Stuart a little bit about the saloon, kind of a neat thing that he told me that they're doing with the saloon is it's actually going to be, you can attach it to another forthcoming building that they have coming out. That's kind of a neat concept where one of the railings on the second floor is going to like actually come off, and you just kind of puzzle it together with this other building. So that's going to be a neat thing. So the town is like, with each month is growing more and more. One of the other things, let's see, some of the other things we saw is we saw Edison's posse set was on display, so you got to see him with his sonic weapon and his wife, and you know the constructs with the sonic weapons and two gun dogs.
Oh yeah, and the gun dogs even had sonic weapon attachment.
It's going to be a neat weapon upgrade for them. We saw some outlaw stuff. So we saw some of the Mexican Golden Army, the bloody I can never say it, Brian.
Espinosa.
Espinosa. See, I can say it when you say it, Espinosa.
Well, you do kind of live near Chicago.
Yeah. I'll admit, I'm a flatlander. And then we also saw some
Probably can't roll your R's either.
No. We saw some of the conquistadors, and they teased which I almost got a lynching for because I missed them somehow, the mounted units for them. Yeah, those are going to be pretty cool looking. So they're all mounted on black hoofs.
So yeah, so one of the things in second edition, when the Golden Army split, the Conquistadors and Pancho Villas, they're separate from the Golden Army from first edition, which included Pancho Villa. Well, they're not directly linked anymore. They're completely separated. So the second boss for the Conquistadors was in the mounted set. So we have the three mounted guys that we've had the cards for a while, where one guy has a lasso, one guy has a sword, the other guy has a rifle. Now we'll have three poses in that set of these mounted guys. And then there's the boss, is a female boss, and she's also mounted, and she is carrying a grenade with
Yep.
cross.
It's a whole.
I bet it's like someone stabbed a cross into this grenade. So the only way you can really describe it is it's the holy hand grenade of Antioch.
Yeah.
At least I know a few people will probably get out their psycho brushes from Army Painter and paint Antioch as a
God.
label on.
I don't think my eyes are good enough for that anymore. One of the other posses they teased there, Brian, was the tainted biology. So that's going to be Dr. Bytel's posse set that comes with 2 hex dogs, which are oh man, they look gross.
And the long-awaited snake oil salesman model is in that posse.
Yeah, I might. He has a hat on, if I remember right. I kind of want to. I want to take the hat off. I want to see the bald head.
Well, that would be kind of cool, is to get the 2 options, because he does have the long goatee, and he's got the leg brace, from the DEFCON 2018.
Sorry, Darren.
Hey, I wasn't going to say.
But yeah, so those were some of the things we saw. And then, of course, in the booth, they had some of the dystopian warships that are coming out. So these were just like the resin models, and a few of them they had kind of set up like examples of how you can outfit them with the different weapons. And then, of course, they had the guys. I was talking to Parker from Battlehammer was there, and he was volunteering doing demos, and he said that they were busy nonstop. So a lot of new players were checking the game out. They were doing demos nonstop, and yeah, I mean, it looked like, and it sounded like from what Stuart said, that they were very busy. Roberto, their studio artist, was there showing off his portfolio and a lot of concept sketches. And you know what there was there, Brian? And I know you've seen pictures because I sent them to you, and you about probably flipped your lid. They had a teaser, legendary Jedrick Powell on. He was riding 2020, carrying his big ass cannon that he has.
Yes. Okay. So, again, that was awesome. So, I did not know that was on Splashing, but it was kind of something that had been discussed like over a year ago, but I didn't know it was a valid surprise.
No, I think that model was basically done up in the resin like the day before they left the UK to come over.
So they didn't know that it was going to be there. Although Stuart said he told me there was going to be a surprise at GenCon, and the way he said it, I was like, "Oh, really?" Because earlier that week, he had made a reference to someone else talking about the Infernal Investigation posse and Jedrick in 2020 specifically. And his response was something like, "On a horse." Or there was a reference to a horse, and Stewart said something like maybe or something like that. So when he said that, I did think, put two and two together. I was like, well, there's no way, because I hadn't heard anything about it, right? Nothing, because they like to tease, but no, he out of nowhere, that thing went to 3D sculpt and into a 3D print without anybody leaking it. And
Yeah.
that foretells other surprises that nobody knows that we may be
Yes.
seeing in the future. Now, luckily, Mike Pierce, shout out to you, because first thing Thursday morning, he posted a picture. He posted it. I have a feeling he walked in, saw the thing, took photos of it, and immediately posted just that one picture. Now, I'm sure he took a bunch of pictures, but he immediately posted that. I'm not going to say he posted it for me specifically, but I'm going to think that anyway, because it was literally, I got up, I saw it, and I was like, thank you so much.
I remember getting a message from you, and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Yeah, that's like when I saw that too. I got them to. They actually took the little cover plate plastic that they have on their cases off. So I got all up in. My head was inside the display case, taking pictures of that sucker.
Right. So yeah. So the chain of events. So that was the only picture that Mike had posted. That was it. That's all he posted.
It's GenCon. He was busy.
For days, no other pictures were showing up. Now Warcradle posted a few pictures here and there, and we got some pretty good pics of Rob Hawkins' board. And then after you went Saturday, on Sunday you posted a bunch of pictures. That's when you got all these really up close pictures. And again, I think I did go back into my. Ooh. Got a little freaked out and like, that's so awesome. Especially a real close up one that you took. And then we discovered that you missed a whole section. And then luckily Mike rescued you, because he was like, oh yeah, I have pictures of that. And he
Oh man, I tell you what, I know that like Chuck was giving me a hard time on Facebook about it, and and I commented, I said, he talked about lynching and stuff. I said, man, I'm gonna come back Clint Eastwood style and paint your whole town red just to mess with you. But yeah, like you said, Mike saved me and posted pictures. So I mentioned earlier that we had a couple listeners message me, and they had some questions to try and pick the brains of Stewart and stuff. And one of our listeners, who many of us probably have his model in Wild West Exodus, is Clay Bytel. Many of you don't know, that big old behemoth for the Hex was a model that he got to design, and it was a second Kickstarter, wasn't it, Brian?
Yeah. He did. There were 3 participants of design your own model during the Kickstarter.
Okay.
And
Clay was one of them. Okay. And yeah, Clay messaged me, and Clay wanted to know when we might expect the cards to update with the models from upcoming posse sets. So he's asking, like, online, if they're going to be updated, like the time frame, because sometimes we've seen them a little out of sequence with what version they are and stuff like that. And what Stewart was telling me is that the cards will be released in the week before the actual posse set comes out, not when the posse set goes up for pre-order. So the week before it's actually released, if you go online, I think they've gotten pretty good about, saying how some of the models are unavailable, or not unavailable. What is it they got on there? It's unreleased. So I think when you see that go away, the cards will actually be updated, and all the cards that are going to be in the posse box sets should be updated then too, with the current rule version, which we're on 1.08 now. I haven't seen any of the posse sets be out of sequence like some of the early ones were. So, yeah. So they should be the week before that they're actually released. And then another question we had from a listener that over across the big old pond, Yoris wanted to know if we will ever see like resin bust statues of the models that we like a certain character, like maybe Jesse James bust. So just like shoulders up, kind of an enlarge more of your advanced model that we could hobby paint. Something like you would see at the Adepticon's Crystal Brush. I see a lot of busts painted and entered in their contest there.
Like a little bit bigger, so it's like 75 millimeters. That way, the artists can really get into
all the layers and detail model, and some of those, really, really blow my mind at the time that these artists put into painting these things. And the answer I got for that one is that the busts are something they have considered, but maybe as part of something else. So that's kind of the typical Stuart wink wink answer you got. So it's in their mind. They have so many ideas and thoughts of things that they want to try in this whole dystopian age world. So busts are a possibility. It's something they're considering. They probably have to look at the logistics of it and money and stuff like that. And, really weigh the factors that, okay, is this something that people are going to want? Now, granted, there's probably a lot of us out there in the community that would jump on a chance to paint something that's bigger than our normal scale models, but in more detail. So I think that if they release something like that, it would be a hit, because there's a lot of people in the community like us that need everything and want everything, and we can't get enough type thing. So those are some of the questions that I got to ask them. I asked them a little bit about the Warhost program. I guess that's still in process, so they're still taking applications and going over that. And they said that they'll, contact people once they kind of work through all the different applications people are sending in. But yeah, overall, I think this was a last year for GenCon for Warcradle was kind of like their kind of the first big show over here in America. And just talking to Stuart and the guys, and I talked quite a bit with Chris Pond over there, and some of the plans that they have coming. And it sounds like this year was like, okay, they had, things were set and what to expect. And I think next year, with all the things they got going, it's going to be a huge, huge year for Warcradle. They'll have new stuff out in Wild West Exodus. They're going to have, hopefully, dystopian wars going by then. They may have stuff that they haven't even teased yet by then. So if you are interested in going to GenCon, GenCon's its own animal in itself, but to go see them in that kind of environment is pretty cool. And, who knows? They may have something secret we just don't know about yet. So that was kind of GenCon. I wish I had more time. Maybe next year. Yep,
I would love to make it next year's. It'd be awesome.
Well, you know what we got coming up, Brian? We have Adepticon.
We do. We do, and PAX Unplugged as well. And Warcradle is going to be at PAX Unplugged.
Yeah, and both me and Tom are planning on being at PAX. We'll probably do a shout out on the Dark Council about it if people are going. I know a couple local guys that are already going. I'm pretty sure some of the local guys in there are going to be going. So yeah, part of the community, I guess we could try and connect up and see what happens. So it'd be fun to do pickup games. So what have we been up to since our last podcast? I know Brian's been busily building new posse sets.
That's right. So I'm pretty much ready for varnish on the Divine Intervention. Their basing is pretty much finished. they're just, like I said, waiting for some gloss and matte coating. I am into the layering of my Infernal Investigations posse. And of course, then I'm doing the final details on, or the final basing on 10 deputies. And then I'm in various stages of both the Deadly Seven, Wayward Eight, my scouts, and various other Confederate models. And the Emissary from the Blazing Sun is, I think, almost finished with primary paint. I think I just have to do her hair and a few other things. So yeah, I've got a full table.
So just a few models.
It's been a bit schizophrenic. I was working on the Confederates when I decided, hey, I had this second set of deputies that I hadn't got anything done with for a while. So I started painting those. Then the Deadly Seven came out, and of course I insta-bought those. And then before I could get much paint on them, the Wayward Eight came out, and again I insta-bought those.
Yeah.
Before I could get much paint on them, the Divine Interventions came out, and then that's when I told you, I was like, I'm going to try to bust these out and try to get these off my desk for the Infernal Investigations. I got them mostly done when they showed up, so I had to finish them this week. But
yeah, I feel that pain. We just got back from GenCon a couple weeks ago, and I been kind of slacking on getting new stuff. Just kind of like, well, I got a lot to work on, and I've been working on that stuff, but I couldn't resist them at GenCon, so I kind of got caught up, and I bought like 3 posse sets, and I'm just like, oh my god, what did I just do? I don't have time to do all these.
Okay, so let me guess. You got the Dixie Resurrection set.
Yes, that one I got put together.
Yeah, I put mine together.
It's tough when they release those posse sets that are kind of your factions to play. So it's like I was already behind not getting the absolute power. So, and then that one came out, and now we have another one coming out at the end of this month that it's kind of like, okay, I got to get that one. So it's going to end up being, 3 months of releases that are kind of like, I got to have it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the same way. The release schedule is a bit aggressive. I did skip Absolute Power, not permanently, but I did decide that with the Order being my second favorite faction, that was an insta buy. So I delayed the Absolute Power, but man, some of the models in that set are so awesome. I'll eventually pick it up.
Yeah. I mean, even if you don't play the faction, yeah, like you said, those models are beautiful. I mean, it's got the Emperor in it.
Right. Well, see, I have a version of the Emperor already, but his new sculpt is really good.
Yeah.
And then there's the new creature. He's wicked cool. Then he was the third man. No, not the third man, but the other Dark Council member guy. I can't remember his name, but he's got that nonchalant pose where he's got one leg kicked behind the other.
Yeah, he's just leaning.
Dude, that pose is just so elegant and cool. I want to paint that model.
So, Tom, I know you haven't had much time for modeling. What have you been doing?
I keep getting outbid on this Iron Horse auction. I've been trying to win, but I've been trolling for cheap Iron Horses because I need a whole lot of them.
Well, I saw that the one guy is still posting on the what's the group site, the trading post site. I bought
Fort Laramie.
Yeah, I bought some stuff from him, and he's down to selling like some of his pre-painted stuff. And I know you were asking about stuff from him, and he said something about he had like some pre-painted stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking for bear stuff. So
well, yeah, you want to when you do paint it, you want to make it your own. You don't want somebody else's paint job.
Yeah, so that's all I'm doing right now is I'm trolling. I ever since we had that challenge at the beginning, where we did the list building challenge. That's really been bouncing around my mind. I think I really want to put that together. So
probably very fun.
Yeah. So I asked. It sounds like the release of Iron Horses is not going to happen for new releases, at least until sometime next year. And that's too long to wait. So I'll be haunting sites trying to pick them up.
I did not get a feel for when that's coming out, but they're gonna be fun. All the new stuff's gonna be fun.
Well, yeah. Didn't you have lunch with Stuart? And
yes, I had.
So, yeah, you probably got some leaks or some chat.
Maybe not. Yeah, I mean they're gonna have a very, very busy year. I think by next GenCon is gonna be a really, really big time for them next year, because they're getting the ball rolling on releases now that they can concentrate on working on the new and just start rolling them out. So
will the larger dystopian Wars universe be out by then?
Well, they still have to initiate the beta testing on that, and they haven't announced the date on that yet, but it should be pretty darn soon.
They're hoping to do beta, by fall, and then have that most of it done by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then take it back into the studio for the last month or so of final tweaks, kind of similar to what they did with Wild West Exodus. And so they're hoping first quarter of or second quarter of the year to have Dystopian Wars, the fleet battle game out. So then post that, then that's when they go into some other ideas, I think, on introducing more of the new faction models for the 35 millimeter game. So that we don't know what that's going to look like, because that's like the next phase in development, I guess.
Well, all right. Well, why don't we go ahead and quit our jibber jabber, and why don't we go into some of our segments we got planned for today's episode. All right, guys. Today on this segment, we're going to cover fortune and spending it. So fortune is something that all the models in Wild West Exodus have, certain models anyway. And what fortune is, so why don't we go ahead and describe what fortune is. Fortune is it's a currency on certain models, usually bosses and some faces have it, that they can spend to do a number of different abilities, whether it's re-rolling a dice or maybe, nominating a different one of your guys as a target of a shoot action. And anybody in your posse can spend it, as long as it's either coming from themselves, and most guys have one or two, or if it's coming from the boss, and that boss has an ability called largesse. I just lost my train of thought.
Right. So as long as the boss is still in play, a largesse allows any of the models in that boss's posse to use his fortune to do any of these 7 things you can do with fortune.
Yeah.
So say you bring 2 bosses, which we discussed in an early episode. You have 2 bosses, and they both bring a posse. So they both have models, but the 2 models that boss A, say Wyatt, brings, those 2 models that he brought are the only ones that can borrow his fortune. And the 3 models that Wild Bill brings can only use Wild Bill's fortune. So somewhat similar is if you bring Grant, he brings you 3 fortune, and say you have a whole bunch of models that Grant brought, all the hands that he brought, they only have 3 fortune they can borrow. If you bring Custard, who has 8, he normally cannot share because he doesn't have the largesse rule unless he takes his posse. So if he takes the Forlorn posse, then he gains largesse. to then be able to share his fortune with any of the models he brings in his posse. But you have to keep track of which set of models are which with boss. That way, you're spending the fortune card.
Yeah, a lot of times, and like what they say to do is you can use each unit's fortune. You can represent it with like a fortune chip. And like in that case where you have two different bosses in your posse, a lot of times what I used to do before I got Warcradle's fortune chips is I have an old poker set, and I actually use like blue ones for, say, this boss and for in his posse, and then the other half of my little army posse, that I built, I'll use a totally different color. So I'll use blue and black just to help, keep them straight of whose is whose, and that way you don't get them mixed up.
Yeah, I just use the fortunes inside the fortune cookies when I get Chinese food.
Do you read them out then too?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, but do you add in bed at the end?
You beat me to it, Brian.
Hey, I get all the tacky things.
Now, another thing to remember too about the fortune is that when your boss spends it, that he will regain that fortune up to his fortune limit, whatever number that is, when he's done activating. So say you spend it, just for simple sake, you spend it during his activation, to do rerolls or to maybe spend it for to focus and a move action or something like that. This is one of the things you can do that we'll talk about in a minute. When he's done activating, say he has 4, he spends them all. When he's done, all that comes back up. So then anybody left in the posse can then in turn go ahead and spend it. Now, when they spend it, it's going to be gone until he has a chance to activate again, which in most cases will be the next turn. So if there's some kind of condition or ability that basically forces him where he can't activate, he doesn't replenish his fortune if it was spent.
Yep. This is one of the things that I like about this rule, and it encourages you to spend the fortune because you're going to get it back at the end of the turn. So right. you can use it to make your character better for that turn with the full knowledge that you're going to get all of that fortune back, which I think is just a really cool thing. You're not just sitting there hoarding it for a rainy day.
Right. There's no reason not to use it. Right.
And really, if you think about it, fortune, I think, is a real key, big part of the game. It can really put over whatever action you're doing to, you're in a really tight spot and you really need to get done what you're trying to do. Hopefully it's there for you to use. There's been many cases when I've spent it on other things that I thought I really needed to do, and then it wasn't there. So it really is a deciding factor in your games.
Yeah, I've definitely found that, when your fortune runs out, your fortune has run out. That's usually when you die.
Yeah.
It's very cinematic that way. It's like, I've used up all my luck. Now I'm dead.
Right. So, yeah, the Wild West has there's quite a few tactical, methods in the game, right? So fortune is one of the tactical ways of playing the game. The use of or the manipulation of fortune in the game is extremely tactical. Another tactical thing is the use of adventure cards, whether you use them to tactically gain points through glory or to use them in mechanics as guts. And again, it's a very tactical thing. The tactical use of your models, that kind of stuff is pretty much in all games, but the cards and the fortune are kind of the unique things, interactions in Wild West Essence. And, one of the coolest adventure cards is the ones that allow you to replenish your fortune.
Yeah.
Completely. So that gives some models, if you can get that card, a huge boon. You have that card in your hand, you go out with your boss, or another good tactic is anyone with gamble. So if you have gamble and you have a lot of your fortune and you have a replenished fortune card, that model is going to explode on the game, because when gamble trick, you get a card and it's too low. Like say Doc gets a 1 for his activation, his action card, and for Doc that's horrible. But if it's a 1, you have a good chance, and gamble allows you to draw this next card. If the next card is greater than the one you drew, he gets to use that new card, but it also unlocks his limit. So now he has no limit. So really, if you have a bunch of fortune and a bunch of +1 action cards, you could just keep going, because there is no limit to what you can do. And that's what that replenish card is going to be great for, is say you have a boss with 4 fortune, you can use those 4, hit the replenish, and you can use the other 4. And you just get to run this model, and he's just going to be, exploding all over the board. So, it's a tactical way of using both fortune and the cards in a synergistic way where it can really just make a whole bunch of things happen in the same activation.
All right. We mentioned that there's a couple different ways for spending fortune. There's 7 different ways. They list them all in the book, and we'll go ahead and we'll run down all the different ways. So, Tom, why don't you take the first one of spending fortune?
Well, you can spend a fortune to focus. And we all know what focus does, right?
We may have new audio listeners.
Yep. Well, when you focus, you get +2 to your different you get bonuses to attributes.
Hey, Tom, what's prodigious? What that was that word, Eric.
Now you want me to say it, huh? Prodigious.
Prodigious?
Prodigious.
What does prodigious do, Tom?
Prodigious.
Was that new Greek model?
Yeah, I have no idea what prodigious does.
I do.
That's something for the gag reel.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually looked that up last week too, and I can't remember what it is now.
Okay, so this is one of the common rules called prodigious, and what it does, it gives you a +3 for any focuses. So it's a huge benefit if your model actually has this as one of their common abilities, but it's often one of the most common forgotten ability.
Yes, it is. It is.
Because you just forget. Like I did. My games this weekend, completely forgot one of my models had it, and I focus ran. It didn't help.
So yeah, I have to go over focus because we're all a little slap happy right now.
Why do we always record so late?
Focus. So when
it gives you a +2.
+2
to various things.
Yes, a +2 on any of your checks. So like Brian said, when you're doing a quick check and you focus it, you're gonna give him a +2 inches. So his normal stat of quick is 5. I'm going to focus it, spending a fortune chip from my boss. Now he can go an additional 2 inches. It's basically what focus is.
Right. So, and then if you focus like aim, add 2 to your aim. If you just focus your fight, focus a grit check, they just all add 2.
Yeah, all their stats, their mind. The only thing that you're not going to be able to focus on their stats is their limit. So there's adventure cards for that can affect
that would just be mean.
Yeah, it would be. Especially when that boss has the 4 fortune. Hell yeah, I'm just going to keep going. The second one is going to be hunkered down. So for the price of 1 shiny fortune chip, a unit can hunker down regardless of whether it's their activation or not. So say you got a guy and he's getting ready to just be blasted by a unit of, say, Union riflemen, since that's kind of what I have felt the effects this past weekend of. And the guy can say, okay, I'm going to spend one of my boss's fortune or one of his own, if he has his own, and immediately take a hunker down condition and get that +1 to his grit. So it's kind of like he's ducking down on the ground and taking cover because he sees all this hell that's getting ready to be launched at him.
Don't forget, though, there are penalties involved in being hunkered down. So take that into consideration before you do it.
Yeah. Yep. That's actually, I think, one of the ways spending fortune a lot of people forget is about hunkering down. A lot of people are used to doing it with the action points. And a lot of, there's been many times that, I'm kind of watching players play and they're like, I got this, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm like, well, you got all that fortune over there, and the guy hasn't activated yet. It's going to come back. Oh, yeah. See, once again, reminding people that feel free to spend it. If it's coming from a guy that hasn't activated yet, he's going to get it back. So one thing to remember.
And if his boss uses up all his fortune right before you activate a model that's going to shoot at him, he won't have it when you can.
That is true. See, that's where we come into the balance of the game. It's my favorite part of the game is it's that balance of I really need it to spend it to stay alive, but oh crap, I really need it to kill his dudes. So it's a balance. Brian, you take the next one.
Yeah. So the next one is Lucky Son of a Gun. So
I want to say something else.
Right. Goo, yeehaw. Anyway, so Lucky Son of a Gun allows you to re-roll any roll. So you are rolling for, your grit check. You fail the roll. You can use a fortune from your own or one from your boss to then re-roll it. Now, remember the one rule in the new edition is you can only re-roll a re-roll once, but it does give you that extra chance if you fail your roll. Some of the other things that you can re-roll this for is you can re-roll it for, say, you're rolling scatter and you got a bad scatter. Yes, you can use it for that roll as well. You can use it for any die roll in the game. You can use a fortune to re-roll it. And say you shoot at a rate of attack of 3, they all fail. You have 3 fortune. You can roll all 3. You just can't re-roll what you just re-rolled.
Yeah, that's one of the ways to spend a fortune. I do that a lot, and that's what usually gets me into trouble because then I don't have fortune left.
Right. The other caveat on the re-rolling is you can never re-roll a critical success or a critical failure. So what this means, say you're shooting someone who's a moving target, where it's going to force you to re-roll your successes because he's moving so fast, he's hard to hit. Well, if you roll a crit, he can't force you to re-roll. Flip side, you're trying to shoot that guy and you roll a critical 1 or critical failure of 1, you can't use fortune to re-roll that. All right, so this is number 4. The fourth way of using fortune is
push it.
Well, you know what? I Tom, if you didn't do it, I was gonna do it. I
was thinking the same thing.
There's a certain individual from across the pond that sings this song a lot in their videos, so that one's for you, Parker. Little air horn for him too. So, since you were singing the Push It by Salt and Pepper, do you want to take this one, Tom?
Sure. So Push It is a unit may spend a fortune chip as an action point and may do so multiple times during an activation. The first time it costs 1, the second time it costs 2, the third time it costs 3, et cetera. So this kind of goes along with what Brian was talking about before, where if you have the fortune, you can really have your character do a lot of things by adding on actions, well beyond what they can normally do. It's expensive. It costs a lot to add on those extra actions. But the things you can do, especially with some stronger characters and things, you can really wipe up a lot of the other team's forces if you're doing attacks, or you could get yourself across the board or get yourself in better positioning, into cover, whatever you need to do. this is just extra actions, and the action economy in this game is a huge part of it. So when you can kind of do something to sort of bend that action economy in your favor, that's always going to be helpful.
And sometimes you're kind of forced to spend your fortune to push it. Like, say, for example, you have the unlucky draw of getting just one action point. And it's just like, oh my God, I was planning on doing a move and a shoot, or a move and a shoot, double shoot. And a lot of times what I try to do is, if I have something that gives you the action point in your adventure deck hand, I'll try to spend that before the fortune, because that fortune is very, very, very precious. But a lot of times you just have a bad hand, you get a bad draw for action points. It's there, so don't be afraid to spend it to do that action point. But like Tom said, just watch how much of it you spend, because it does cost you more and more the more you use it.
Right. So the key on knowing, when you're doing actions, so the first combat action is 1 action point. The second combat action is 2. The third is 2. Fortune in Push It doesn't work that way. Fortune, when you're spending it for action points, is 1 for the first time, 2 for the second time, 3 for the third, and so on. So what happens is, as you need more action points for that one unit, it's cumulative.
It's going up by 1.
And it goes up every time. So it's easy. If you want to know how much does it cost you to get 3 action points from Fortune, it's going to cost you 6 Fortune. 1 for the first one, 2 for the second one, 3 for the third. Those of you who don't know how to do math in your head, write it out. Calculators, it'll help you.
Write it on your palm. Like, it's cool. For the next one, see, what are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is number 5 ways for spending fortune, is taking one for the team. So when you have a model that's nominated as an initial target of an attack, you can spend a fortune to pick a different friendly model. So your guy's buddy that's within 3 inches of him, and you can nominate him to basically take the hit. So that friendly model, then, he does have to be in range of the attack. So he has to be the same, say the guy that was initially targeted is 12 inches. So that guy, that friendly model that you nominate, has to be within that same range of the weapon. And then what he would do is he would actually take the grit check for it. It's like he's diving in front of the bullet to save his buddy, and he's pushing him aside. So it's very cinematic. He's nobly taking a bullet for his buddy, so he doesn't have to die. Say his grit's lower. You're going to nominate the guy that's next to him. I have done this a couple times with some tag teaming of Dr. Bytel and the big nasty grizzly bear with the Gatling gun for Dark Nation, when I just run a generic Dark Nation. And the two of them, they function pretty good together. So
right, it's really useful. So say you have a model that's already been hit, he's already used metal, he's already used his quick in the dead, and now he's
next hit he's gone
right there in the middle of nowhere. But his buddy Bob is 3 inches away. Bob, man, got to jump in front of that bullet for your boss, man.
Bob.
I mean, you got to do it. Well, it gives you one more tool.
This is why I generally find it a good idea to keep a unit of hands around your, in and around your boss. Is specifically for this. They're meat shields.
Yeah.
Right. You can add. Yeah. If all else fails, you spend a fortune. You grab a meat shield. You throw them in front, and let the chips fall where they may.
So I don't know if that's as cinematic as your buddy diving in front of you taking the bullet. That's more like your boss grabbing, the schlub and saying, "Come here, you." It's pulling them in
that's cinematic.
I don't know if I'd want to work for that boss.
Yeah, you could be nominated to take one for the team. You don't have to willingly do it.
That's what these guys get paid for.
Right. Okay, so here's another one. This one is number 6. 6 fortune uses. Okay, so Veteran Instincts is the 6th one. And Veteran Instincts, when your model is nominated as initial target, you can spend 2 fortune chips to immediately gain on the lookout condition. And, on the lookout condition basically means if someone's targeting you, you get to make a free attack on them before their attack triggers. They call that a give 'em hell reaction to the attack, as though you had a condition prior to being targeted. You cannot use Veteran Instincts or taking one for the team against the same attack.
So you can't combo them, basically, right?
Yeah, you can't do one and fail, and then, then I'm going to do this next one. You got to do one or the other. So, yes, so Veteran Instinct, if you didn't already have the on the lookout, it gives you that immediate chance to do so, and then you get to give 'em hell.
I don't know if I have any guys in my Enlightened that have been able to do Veteran Instincts.
I haven't, or taking one for the team. I haven't used either one of those.
No. Okay.
I probably just forget.
See, even us, a lot of these I forget about when we're playing the game. I remember some of the more basic ones, like focus and hunker down and push it. It's hard to forget push it when you have the song go in your head all the time. So.
Well, I mean, it's definitely easy to remember the things that are immediately just, bonuses or rerolls. Something like Veteran Instincts, though, I mean, when you think about it, is hugely valuable. Somebody goes to target your boss, and all of a sudden he's got Veteran Instincts and pops them instead.
Yeah.
It really...
If you're using Slain, or let's say you're using Stonewall Jackson, Wyatt Earp, anyone with a -4 piercing weapon, you could be using this all the time.
Yeah.
No one ever is going to get a shot off if you constantly throw a -4 in their face.
Well, yep, and there's some psychological damage you can do with that too. The first couple of times that happens to you, all of a sudden you're like, I'm not targeting that guy anymore.
Every time I shoot at Wyatt, he shoots me back.
All right, so we have one more left.
That's right. So let's walk it off.
Or I like to call it, rub some dirt on it.
Rub some dirt on it. That's a good one. They should change it to rub some dirt on it.
So this one, pretty simple. You spend a fortune and you can remove stun, disordered, or hazard conditions that are on that model. Pretty self-explanatory there. The only caveat there is if you're out of coherency, you're just going to become disordered again immediately anyway.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're in coherency.
It's any and all. So say you've gotten hit with a disruptor blast and it had hazard because it critted, and you were out of coherency. So you got the whammy. You have all the negative things on your model. You activate, you got a fortune, boom, all of it goes away.
And the key thing to remember too is it's in that unit's activation. So it has to be in your activation. So say you have, like you were saying earlier, Brian, a guy that's, he used his Quicken the Dead, he's out of fortune, he's already disordered, but he hasn't activated yet. So you can go ahead and remove that disordered, and then that way you don't have the -1 to his limit. You don't have to worry about, having nothing left that's defensive if somebody takes a shot at him again. And then when he's done, he gets that fortune back and, stuff like that. So it's stuff to think about.
Yep.
Well, all right. That covers all the different ways, 7 different ways for fortune and spending it. There's a lot to think about when you play the game. If you're fairly new to the game, try to maybe pick out some of those and just, try them out. If you have to write them down, so they're in a little cheat sheet next to you so you remember to try them out. It's practice, the more you play, the more you practice them, you'll start remembering them. Some are easier to remember than others, but you'll get them.
And here's some things talking about fortune. Warcradle makes a really good pack. You can get a set of what they have for fortune, which are actual poker chips with the Wild West Exodus symbol on one side and the skull and spade that's similar to be on the dice. So you get a set of their dice and a set of these fortune poker chips. But you don't have to use those. You obviously, I know, Eric, I know you have your own set of poker chips.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Warcradle ones, but I have, like an old, like casino gambling, poker set that came with like 4 different colors of poker chips.
Right. So you can use those. Some people use, I guess, little stones from another game.
Yeah, like the glass beads.
You can use the old activation tokens from first edition. You can use silver coins from your pocket if you have a pocket full of coins. So you can use anything you want as far as how the tokens work. And basically you stack them up on the card or near the model. Some people actually have the fortune that follows the model around on the table. So yeah, you can do those. You just got to have a way of making sure you keep your separate fortune pools, because your boss has fortune, but then you may have some faces that have fortune of their own. You want to make sure you separate them. In first edition, you'd lump all the influence into one pool. It didn't matter where it came from, unless it came from a totem or a Dark Council member. But in 2.0, it's important where the fortune comes from, because it stays on that model.
All right. Tom, you want to give us another rendition of Push It? As we sign off.
No. But all I could think of the entire time we're talking about this is I just sit there going, fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory.
Stick around, guys. We'll have more for you in a little bit. All right, guys, we got a kind of a new segment, a fun segment that the 3 of us wanted to try today. So we wanted to do, like, there's all the different shows and YouTube shows out there, and they're doing their top 3 or top 10 or, God forbid, top 50 of something out there. So we thought we'd keep it a little shorter and do a top 3 Wild West Exodus models that all of us like. And I had one rule for all of us on there, is that we were going to pick models that are currently available. So when you guys are listening to us ramble on about these models, it's, something you could go out there and buy, that's already in the world. So I had to hold certain individuals to that rule, because somebody wanted to pick models that aren't coming out for a while yet, but so why don't we go ahead and we'll start at the bottom and we'll work up to our most favorite model. And one of the things for picking these models, we came up with is it could be a model that's either, maybe you like the stat or the ability on it, it really kick some butt out there on the battlefield, or maybe it's just something that's prettier, it's just cool looking, that you just like the look of the model. So why don't we go ahead and start? Who wants to start? Nobody. Crickets. I heard crickets.
You're our moderator. You have to assign us duties. We don't volunteer.
All right, Tom.
I'll go first.
You want to go first? Okay, Brian's going to go first with his number 3.
Here's number 3.
Okay, so my number 3 most favorite model, which, now talk about the impossible task, right? Because I, of course, have most of the models in the game. It's very difficult. There's so many good models. But, so my number 3 is the Union Boss General Custer, or Colonel Custer. Now, the reason Union fames over here. What's funny is the Union's not my favorite faction, but that model, transcends its faction, because it's just a really cool model. So Custer's pose is just awesome. He's hunkered down behind a fence. He's got both pistols out. He's covering both sides of his cover. I mean, it's just such a really cool pose, and it's so dynamic that's what put it over the top for, to make it to my top 3. Then his rules are even cooler because now he's a boss and he's got the largest fortune total in the game, but does not have largesse. So you bring him as a boss in a regular faction-themed posse, he's the only one using that fortune. So he has the ability to become basically the re-roll guy, and it's awesome. You bring some male models and some female models, his stats get gross because he's got for the boys and for the girls. So there's a little bit of trickery with his rules that are just really cool. He also has a mounted version, so if you want to bring him on an iron horse, you can do that. And when you bring him in his forlorn posse, his theme posse, he gets largesse. And then he can share that with all the hands that he's going to be bringing. So it does open him up quite a bit in that regard once you take his theme posse. So he's a well-rounded boss. He's fun to play and just a really remarkable model. So my number 3.
Okay, Tom, when you're done kind of wiping the drool, because I'm sure you're drooling over that. Pick.
Yeah, I like me some Custer. So
what? Go ahead and give us your number 3, Tom.
My number 3 is Venatici Helios from the Order. Before she was Helios, she was the Holy Order Lady of the West when she first came out, before she actually had any character to her. And I thought she was one of the coolest looking ladies of the West out there. So for me, it was just the look. She's just got this look about her, like she just hamstrung somebody and is walking up behind them, getting ready to finish them off. No nonsense. Really kind of has that militaristic feel that I think that parts of the Order have. So I just loved the look of the character more than anything else. I don't even play Order, so it's not even. Oh, I mean, she's so great on the field of battle. I just thought that she was one of the coolest looking models when she came out. Just very much appealed to me.
So your third pick was based on looks.
Yep. Yep.
Nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of models in this game that I think there's a lot of us in the community that bought just because it looked cool. So, all right, for my number 3, I started with Slain. Now, I think the main reason... Now, Slain I got in the second Kickstarter back with Outlaw. And I think the main draw for me is... See, I shouldn't bust your chops too much, Tom, because actually this model is... He looks like Dr. Doom. So that was my big attraction to him. I actually painted him up, with the greens and the silvers to look like Dr. Doom. But he also is a pretty good face. So what's neat about him is he will work in both
hex... You used the wrong word there. You said pretty good.
Well, okay, yeah.
It's not pretty good. He is a awesome face.
Well, it depends who's rolling those dice. And, usually my dice are kind of... they can be unforgiving. Let's put it that way. But one of the neat things I like with him is that he's a mercenary who works with the Outlaw, and he also works with the Hex. So he's kind of... He can work in both of those, which gives him some utility that you can use him in wherever you want. And he's got good stats. I mean, his main weapon, the custom pistols, where he can change his ammo clip based on whether you want lethal or you want brutal or what's the other one, Brian? Is it disrupt or stun? I think it is.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you can kind of adjust to whatever you're facing out there with him.
Yeah, his pistols were great in 1.07, now that we're in 1.08, they're epic level. He got the -4 piercing.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Sick.
And then he's got Stone Cold Killer too, so it's like, he gets another action point when he destroys an enemy model, so he could just keep going and going. I mean, he has a limit of 3, so he does have a limit, but he's very, very good.
Save that adventure card +1 limit.
There you go. Yep. But that Slain is my number 3. So let's go ahead and go to number 2.
And now for number 2.
Brian, you started with number 3, so let's hear what your number 2 pick is.
All right, so my number 2 pick, fairly new model, but I think I had insider knowledge on that model for over a year. But this model has actually been one of the most requested model since the first Kickstarter. And that is 2020, the Infernal Investigations Blackhoof base or support model. He is a human. He can transform into a humanoid shape. And the way Stuart described this character was he served valiantly with the Union during the Civil War. And most of the Blackhoofs of that era, they basically, because they were first generation tech, a lot of them basically leaked radiation. And so they only were used during the war, and then they just kind of discontinued them. But with 2020, he actually got his power sources upgraded, so he's not a hazard anymore. And he got moved over because he was a good Blackhoof during the war. They kind of put him through the Tesla program to get him the upgrades to be able to transform into a humanoid. And then he got basically moved over to service with the lawmen. And then he teamed up with another Infernal Investigations that we'll talk about later. But 2020, humanoid horse. A lot of people were asking for the Brave Star 3030. And so this is basically the Wild West Extras version, carrying a huge cannon. He's got hammer fists with his hooves. And he's just a cool sculpt, and his card's good. First time I fielded him in the game, he took out the Magenta Alpha. He definitely earned his points in the game. Just excited to see him do the same this weekend when I go play again. So that's my number 2.
Tom, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Albert Campbell from the Union. So there's so many things I like about him. I like both the way he plays. I like his stat line. I like his rules. But I just also love the look of the model. He basically, to me, looks like Apone from Aliens. So the sergeant that was in charge of everything, you chewing on the cigar, and he's just very reminiscent of that to me. And then he's bulked out. He's got the big loader hand, that also, from the loader at the end of Aliens. So, just as soon as I saw him, that's immediately what I thought of, and I thought that was pretty awesome. But then actually as a playable character, he's a very, very good close-in fighter. He's got a good fight stat, but more importantly, he's got that servo claw, which -2 piercing is, okay, it's standard. But it's got brutal and lethal as its properties, which just makes it really, really nasty. And then when he's in close, he's also got thermite grenades. So, again, you've got brutal and blast and hazardous, and they're all at very close range as a close range fighter. And then to me, the big thing is that he's got the underboss trait. So you pay 45 extra points and he can become a boss. And as a boss, one of the cool things he has is he's got the inspirational special rule. So any friendly unit within 6 inches may re-roll a single dice roll. It's basically like handing out extra fortune. Yeah. Throughout your, within a 6-inch bubble. But I mean, you're talking about a foot across. That's a good chunk of space there.
And you're not actually physically spending the fortune, which is nice.
Exactly. So to me, I think that's fantastic. He's got repair, so he gives a tough common rule to structures, artifacts, machines, constructs within 3 inches. So he's got the trapper ability, so you can take an extra booby trap. he's just a kind of a utility guy, which I think really fits his theme because he's basically a big construction worker. So, but I think between both his utility and his usefulness as a unit on the table is great, and I think the model is fantastic.
So what was his one big quote from Aliens, Tom?
Well, he had a couple of good quotes. My favorite one, though, is "Look into my eye." But it's the gesture that he does.
Yeah, we can't exactly get that across in audio, but I think if anybody has seen the Alien movies, they know what we're talking about.
Yep.
All right, my number 2. I went with a unit that's not actually a named character, a face, or a boss. I went with something that's a little bit more universal in a lot of different factions, and it's a support unit. And I ended up going with the Canine Gun Dogs. Now, what I like about the Gun Dogs, like I said, is that you can use them in the Enlightened that I like using so much, and you can use them in Outlaws. You can use them in just about all the factions except for Watchers, and I know there's another one. It's like off in my brain somewhere. It just won't come out. So they're a pretty universal support unit that you can use in some of the different factions. What I like about them is they come standard with the flamethrowers and their steel jaws, but I don't think I've ever used them straight up with flamethrowers. I always end up spending the extra money and I upgrade them with the Juice Gatling guns. And the Juice Gatling guns, you're throwing 3 dice at a range of 15. And if they're the type of unit that you can take anywhere from 1 to 6. So if you get a couple of those in a unit, they can be really nasty with those Gatling guns. Granted, you will have to pay for them, but I think they're a great unit to add, to your faction. One of the things I like about them, and some of the faces have a special ability like Sick 'em. So if you keep these gun dogs close to that face, after that face has activated, and if they're within a certain range, you can go ahead and activate the gun dogs then. So it's almost kind of like getting 2 activations, in one before your opponent can actually activate a character. So, but yeah, and the newer gun dogs, what's neat too is that with some of the reissuing of them, they've actually modeled on their sprue different weapon choices that you can do. So like if you want to do the Gatling guns or you want to do the flamethrower. And then there's like a laser, isn't there? I think there's a laser gun that you can put on their back. They come with different heads now.
Rocket pod.
So yeah, they got a lot of different ways that you can build them now. So that is my number 2 choice. It's the Canine Gun Dogs.
Good choice. They're always popular.
Yeah, I always like when I'm facing an opponent that has the other dogs, the attack dogs, and you get both units of dogs attacking each other, and it's like Rottweilers facing little Chihuahuas.
Well, yeah, and tabletop gaming. The last 2 months of the magazine, they actually had like bright RJ orange versions of the gun dogs, and then the next month they had the bright orange RJ orange attack dogs. So you bought the magazine, you got a free sprue with 2 attack gun dogs on it. I did actually mail order that from across the sea because it's a UK magazine, but I did get a hold of that for the gun dogs, but did not reach out and try to get the attack dogs.
Yeah, I was lucky that one of my local stores actually got the magazine in, so I was able to walk in and buy it off the shelf. I still got to figure out how I want to paint them because I want that fluorescent orange to come through. So, because it definitely jumps out on the table.
Yeah, just paint what the stuff you don't want to be bright orange. I was thinking of doing the same.
Yeah, just go get some dip. Just dip them and done.
All right, so that was our number 2. So we are on to our top picks for our little fun thing here of...
Or should we go through honorable mention?
Yes, let's do the honorable mention. Now, this honorable mention is not necessarily our number 1 pick, but it's just the poor dude that didn't make the list, that didn't get picked on the kickball team.
Yeah, it's a number 4, or say it's a number... It could have been any one of our top 3. But...
Yeah, it could have fit in the top 3. Let's put it that way.
So it's the first loser.
There you go, first loser.
We'll say so. My honorable mention is not the first loser. It's just because of a very acute reason why I picked my 1 and 2. She just didn't have room in my top 3, and she is from the Order, and it is Salto. She is the portal manipulator of the Order. She is in an epic. She's in a sprint with her hand up to open up portals, and just a really cool. She's got a sword on the back. Just a really cool model. She's got her helmet is almost reminiscent of the knights of the round table. It just really cool. She's got these braids, but they're more like tendrils. I, of course, put blue energy all throughout those tendrils. She's just a really cool model. I love painting her. In the version 1.0, she saw a lot of action in my games. She was well worth the points. Portal manipulation was just always something I was doing. She would get Nahhh, her boss, in and out of, hairy situations with the portals. Just a really good model, great utility. Haven't given her a run on the table in the new version yet, but now that my Divine Intervention posse is painted up, she's going to hit the table soon enough. So that's my honorable mention. Like I said, she's not out of the running of the top 3, but when I get to my top 1 and my other 2 choices to make my top 3, you understand that it was difficult to fit everyone in. That I really.
Oh yeah, it is, but we had to think about time. So Brian, she's basically the bridesmaid, not the bride, right? Wah, wah.
Well, technically, all my top 3 are dudes, so you can be the bride.
There you go. Even though one's a horse.
Yeah, how do you know he's a guy?
Well, I've already started painting him.
It's too bad the listeners couldn't see that little eyebrow raise there.
You just gotta lift the tail.
Lift his tail. Well, Tom, what is your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is Helena Miller from the Infernal Investigations, or Infernal Affairs. Not for nothing, she's the Rocketeer, and I just think that's awesome. I mean, just the clothes she's wearing, the backpack, she's just missing the helmet.
I was thinking of sculpting that helmet and attaching it to her belt.
I think you should. I mean, I just think that would be so awesome. I mean, she's got some cool things she can do as far as how you use her on the table. She's got a lasso she can drag. She's got a rate of fire 3 gun that stuns, and so she's got a whole bunch of cool things she can do on the table. But I mean, for me, that was really what it came down to. Is she's the Rocketeer. She's going to get painted as the Rocketeer. I'm just going to call her the Rocketeer. I'm going to forget what her name is, and that's okay.
Tom, I actually kind of remember back. So when did that movie come out? It was like early 90s. I kind of remember toys of that movie, and I know you've been on eBay a lot looking for some iron horses. You might want to look for some Rocketeer toys that just, slice that head off and maybe put it on top of her head.
She'll be a giant bobblehead, but
sure. So my honorable mention, I totally went outside of my chosen factions, and I will admit a lot of this is just because she's just that darn pretty looking, or scary. I went with Magenta Alpha from the Watchers. Now, I remember when they first started teasing this model in the 3D renders, and she had that big, huge old tail that was posable. I was just like blown away by this model, how much it looked like the Queen from Aliens. You know, it kind of had that same design cues that they had in the movie. So it kind of goes with your one model there, Tom.
Yeah, we got to get them together.
Yeah, yeah, we can have a square off. But yeah, a lot of this pick, you know, I think I've faced her once. And I know a couple of our local players have tried her out. She's very melee heavy. Her fight is ridiculous. It's a fight of 8. She is pricey, but she does have a lot of fortune to use. She's got her Xeno shield. She's got a lot of little tricks, but it's just a fantastic looking model. This is a model that, even though I really don't have any intention of playing the Watchers, I mean, I have a lot of them from the first edition. This is a model I would get just to paint up and just have fun building. So, yep, that is my honorable mention, Magenta Alpha. So, you know what I just thought of, guys? All our runner-ups, our honorable mentions, are all bridesmaids. Every single one of them.
What does that say about us?
Well, let's move on to our number 1.
Quit teasing me and give me number 1.
All right. So, no shock here by my compatriots on the podcast. My number 1 model is Jedrick Powell.
What?
What? No way! But it's not just because I had something to do with the design and of the model.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
No one was thinking that.
One of the coolest parts of the model, one is, the process that they went in with working with Roberto and Stuart and in the creation is just really cool. There are several other people who have done that, gone through that process, and I think to a person really enjoyed that process, and I am one of them. But those who know me from the forum, or those who just know me, my forum name is Jedi Powell. So I've always, that's my goal, is if I ever got to do a model when I was in the deputy program, that was my goal. And of course, Lawman's my main faction, so my model was always going to be a Lawman. One of the things the Lawman had was they had very little access to hand-to-hand models. Aside from Judge Stern, everything else was pretty much gun-focused. So I wanted a hand-to-hand specialist. And so it was built around the idea of the stun batons. So a little bit upgraded ass batons that all the lawmen were carrying. Now they were just a little bit better. So he's got two batons, 2 pistols. He's got a cloak. He's got the hood up. So it kind of invokes the idea of the Jedi. He's been described as the grizzled veteran of the lawmen, kind of like Helena Miller's, go-to veteran to investigate all the weird stuff going on in the Wild West. He teams up with 2020. Super great idea. Thank you, Stuart. And just a great model. In addition to that, the stat card is amazing. He plays really, really good. His pistols are rail pistols, so he's got a little more penetration than most models. They have a better range than most pistols. If he gets in close, good luck. The stun is just mean, especially if he wades into a unit of hands. He's only got to hit one. They all get stunned, and it just goes downhill from there. He's got some really cool features in his special abilities that just are awesome, and they interact well or have synergy with Helena Miller's. So one of the things that they can do is Jedrick can look at the top card of one of the 2 decks, right? So you can prejudge hey, what's coming next. So that really comes into effect when you're looking at doing teamwork, or say you're trying to set up the next model that you're going to play. Well, Helena Miller can look at the top 3, and then she can put them back in whatever order she wants. And man, my last game with these 2, I set up the perfect, set where the cards that Helena Miller looked at, I was able to put them in the specific order where I was able to just dominate enough of the watchers I was playing against to pretty much just tie the game up. It was like a nice little package, the way I was able to get those cards in the specific order that I wanted to really just hammer this game closed. And it just turned out perfect. So a lot of great synergy. He also has an underboss. So if I want to pull a little shenanigans and bring him as a boss, I can do that as well. So just a great model, great stats. I am extremely thrilled that he's out. He's on my table right now, getting his painting on. Number one model.
Yeah, I got one sitting downstairs. It's in the on the table queue of models to start working on. It does look like a fantastic, fun model just to build and paint. All right, Tom, what do you got for us for your number one?
My number one, maybe a little bit of an unusual choice because it's a support unit, but one that I've loved since it came out. It's the UR31C Heavy Lawbot. First off, the model is great. I love the look of it. I love the whole idea of the Lawbots since they were created. To have a heavy weapons version of one was great, especially he doesn't have that tiny little girly little Gatling gun that you see the other deputies with. This thing is a monster. and I just love the look of it. It's the repeating grenade launcher, which is just really, really nasty. It's got 12-inch range. It's got blast. It's got shred. That in and of itself is what makes this model so good on the table. Its special rules are meh, because they really are. His special rules really help more when things get in close. And if things are getting in close on this guy, you're having a bad day anyway. So it really is. It's the fire support that it lays down. I had fun with him in first edition. I think he's great in second edition. And just I've loved the model since it came out.
There's nothing wrong with picking a support. I mean, the support models are a lot of times a very important part of your posse. They fill a gap. They fill a hole that you have in the posse. So you can't have all named characters usually. So
yep, absolutely.
When you take into regard, there are now several named support models in the game now. 2020, he's a support model. He's a named unique model. Ida in the Infernal Investigations is a named support model. Mercury Jones, another model from the Infernal Investigations, is a named support. Creature from Absolute Power, named support model. So, I mean, the support models they can stand on their own. Some of these newer support models coming out are very good. UR31 Lawbots, you can take more than one.
1 to 3 of them in a unit.
They are really good.
Yep.
I know I've got more than one in my army just because they're that cool looking, man.
They're really cool looking, and you can really just suppress the heck out of the other team. You can cover such an area with those blast templates because, I mean, it's a rate of fire 2 blast template, and then you can have up to 3 of them. So you're putting 6 blast templates across in front of the other team or on top of the other team, plus the scatter. So it can reach out to about 17, even though you can't depend on that. It really is just reaching out and touching someone.
I might have to put music to that, Tom. Well, don't feel so bad because my number one is also a support. So my number one model is from my Enlightened faction, my favorite one to play. And this model is Creation number 7. Now, Creation number 7 was a face, and he just recently, with the new rules update, they put him into the support. His character, stats and everything are still the same. He's just going to occupy a different slot now. But I remember the first time I saw this model, and I was just like, holy cow, look at the size of that model. I mean, it's just a big chunk of resin. It's fantastic. He was so much fun to paint with the 2 heads and 4 arms, and he's just this big hulking character out on the board, and he can be very intimidating just seeing him out there. One of the neat things I like about 7 is he's got a special rule that's called split personality. Now, split personality, what's kind of nice about it is like when you go to flip that action card and say you flip a 1, a crappy little 1, you're like, oh my God, what the heck am I going to do with 1? Well, you can nominate creation number 7, and that will trigger a split personality that lets you redraw, and then you have to activate with that. So he can kind of help you mitigate bad drawing of the action deck, which I always thought was really cool about him. And then also what I really love about him is his creation special rule. So for an action point, you can double the piercing value of a single strike action. So, you can pick, he's got 2 strike weapons. He's got a drill that's a piercing 3 normally. So if you do that, now I'll say now it's a 6. Or you can do his buzzsaw, which is a 4, and you can up that one a little bit. You can only go up to the 6, I believe, right, Brian?
Yeah, it maxes out. So,
but still, it's 2 more that if that's the weapon that you choose to go with. And then unless he's hit by a weapon with a piercing of -4 or greater, he ignores the first point of piercing. So on top of ignoring it, he gets tough. He has metal. He's unstoppable. He's like one of those models that whenever I do posse building, I'm always looking to put him somewhere in there. Because not only does he wreck a lot of stuff, he can actually draw a lot of fire that gives you the opportunity to get your other guys up there to capture objectives or to do this or to do that. So that is my number 1, creation number 7.
He's an absolute tank. With it's hard to kill him, but to me, I love the fact that he's mitigating the draw.
Yeah,
because that's always something that you got to be concerned about, is that you draw that 1, and the fact that he helps you mitigate that low card draw is really, really helpful.
Right, and he does it better. There's no detriment for it, like gambling.
Yeah.
Gambling allows some people to mitigate a crap draw, but if you don't draw something higher, your activation.
You're done. Which I've had that happen with Jesse. I've seen it happen with Doc. It's great when it hits, but yeah, it's you got that risk with that. So that was our top 3 units in the game. If anybody has any comments, like I said, we just did something for fun, whether it was because of the way they played or just how they looked pretty, especially when they're all painted up on the table. If anybody has any comments, you want to kind of discuss what you think is, the best model out there, or who's your bridesmaid, go ahead and, hit us up on the Facebook, or, go ahead and send us a email at our Gmail account. And, we'd like to hear what you guys, think is the best models out there. Well. Thanks for listening to episode 5, guys. This show, it was a bear to get done. We kept getting distracted by some stuff. And speaking of stuff, one of those things that distracted us getting this episode out is that me and Brian got together with Stuart from Warcradle, and we actually have a new show that you guys can, feel free to check out. It's called Blackhoof Saloon Ramblin'. And in this first episode with Stuart, we got to talk to him a little bit about their beta rules release of the Dystopian Wars. And you guys can find that on, the normal feed where you get this podcast, whether it's Podbean or on iTunes or Google Play. So if you guys are kind of interested in Dystopian Wars and want to hear a little bit inside talk about it, go ahead and check that out. But before we wrapped up the show, we had our segments and we really didn't have room for a segment of, sometimes we do the news and stuff. So before we wrap it up, we wanted to go ahead and mention some new stuff. To go over real quick, everybody should be having some new toys show up at their door from last month's pre-order, which were the Secret Service posse, which had Abraham Lincoln in there. The Dark Nation posse's out now. They had a set of brutes that you could get, and also the hexaliths. And then, so this month we already have some pre-orders. Brian, what kind of pre-orders did they have pop up? We actually just saw recently.
Okay, so yeah, they just threw up some pre-orders for the new Ranger showboat. So that brings Calamity Jane into the Ranger table, and all the other models in the posse are models we've seen. So Wild Bill is the leader of the Ranger showboat, and you'll get Grace Myrtle, Nate Ranger, the Copley sisters, and Calamity Jane. So Calamity Jane's going to be neat. She's got a really dynamic, pose. Then another posse. Are you pretty sure you're going to be all excited about is the Galvanic Mystery?
Another one for me
with Augusta. Is that an insta buy for you?
I think so. The problem is this posse set. There's 2 new sculpts in there. Some of the other ones I have, so I may have to do some repaint, I'll experiment with a paint job on them. But so we have in that one, who do we have in that one, Brian? We're getting some new creations. I know they have 2 new creations, or actually the new 13. So we previously had a 13, but 13 became brutes. So now we're going to see the new 13, and he's the creation with the dual RJ canisters sticking up out of his chest. Yeah, and it's cool. We're getting a female creation too.
Right. Creation 10 is a female. She has a buzzsaw and a huge sword arm. So she looks like she's going to be pretty nice to add to the creation. So that'll be neat. And then we get 5.
Yep, the big old hulking guy with the rail gun on his back.
Right, and the 2 big hammer hands.
He's a neat model. And then of course the Countess is the boss in that, Byron. And then we have Mantis, who's also in it. And she actually was one of the Ladies of the West originally. And with second edition, they gave her a name and repurposed her. All those Ladies of the West have come back into the lineup.
In the Kickstarter, all the Ladies of the West did actually become usable models. Okay. So she was always a playable model. It's just now she's going to be in Augusta's posse. And so if there's any design flaw in the original sculpt, which I don't think there was,
they probably cleaned it up a bit.
What they did is they added her to another model on one sprue. So when they spin it, they spin out both models, her and another model together instead of separately.
Okay. And then what else do we got coming with pre-orders? We have a new building.
The saloon. Yeah. So the saloon they just kind of teased it at GenCon, right? So you saw it.
Yeah, I took a couple pictures of it. We have it on the Facebook group, and I know it was in the Dark Council page. They had the showboat all up on that one. Yeah, that's going to be a neat one, because I know that I mentioned it in our GenCon talk at the beginning of the show, that they're going to have another building that's going to kind of go with this one. And we haven't seen any teaser pictures of it yet, but it goes all along with the whole Red Oak Town theme. So that it'd be pretty neat. I mean, if you don't have a saloon, this is definitely one to get, because it's got so much detail in it. I mean, you spin that around, and it's like every side, it was just like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Just the decoration on the thing is really gorgeous, yeah. And then we also have, they're releasing for Warrior Nation Spirit Walkers, and those are basically your Wolfmen. So if you didn't see the pre-orders and you want some more kind of nasty melee guys for Warrior Nation, definitely check those out. So that's all the normal stuff that's up for pre-order. But then just, Brian, what was it, a couple days ago, Warcradle had a big splash of, it's not going to be exclusive, so this is actually going to be in the lineup. It was an anniversary duel figure that they had come out.
Right. Wayland Games, the parent company of Warcradle, hit their 10-year anniversary. So doing that, they decided to celebrate by creating a new model that has a sidekick who they can play for any faction. So what they did is these two models, one's name is Wayland the Smith, and kind of sneaking around on Facebook, Stuart kind of explained why Wayland, and they had named their company at Wayland after a character in mythology. That's why they used Wayland. And in that mythology, he was the Smith. The Smith. That was his niche in the pantheon. So this character is Wayland the Smith, and he's wielding a huge hammer, and basically he doesn't care who he works for. It's just his goal is to repair stuff. So he basically is a model that anyone can add via the boss picking a strategic.
Yeah, that's right.
Model join the posse.
Strategic. So like your civilians and the angry mob and.
Right, and every boss in a posse can bring one unit of one strategic unit. You would be choosing to bring this guy. I think he's like 150 points. He has a big hammer, but it doesn't like interfere with all the other big hitting hammers in the game. So it's not like a game breaker to bring him. But what it does do is bring you repair.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of factions that don't have any access to repair, or they may only have one option.
Right. But what it also does is if you have automatons, he can reanimate your automaton.
Ah, so like
they were creations.
Okay, so like your gun dogs, your attack
dogs. It's a new rule, and it's basically just a robot version of Carpathogen.
Yeah.
Where it only works on automatons, but you get to bring them back up, and they follow the same rules that reanimated, constructs follow. Is they do get the trait reanimated, so they're not as effective as the original, but you're bringing them back again. So it's very useful if you are bringing your automaton. So it doesn't really help all the factions, but all those that have the dogs and the...
Well, it give more options for when you're posse building. I mean, I could totally see it helping. Well, like if you do a lawman posse that has a lot of the lawbots in it, he's going to help with them.
He's a new best friend for Morgan.
Yeah. I mean, or like I said, I tend to bring a lot of gun dogs with the Enlightened because I have a couple guys that have Sikkim. He would help with that, bring them back. So
that's right.
Yeah, so he'll bring some interesting posse building options for people.
And he also has a sidekick. So insert name. I can't remember his name. Mac.
Oh man.
So his sidekick is carrying a huge gun, and he's cheaper than Wayland. But the hinky part about him is he has to be within 3 inches of Wayland, or he does not use his gun. So he literally is a bodyguard for Wayland. So when you he would occupy a second strategic position. So he can't normally join Wayland unless you brought 2 bosses into your army for that whatever game.
So if you do a double boss list, basically.
Right. So if you're running a boss list, you're good to go. Each boss would bring one of them.
Okay.
Back. Panday back.
Okay.
Sidekick. Yeah. So for 150, you bring Wayland with one of your bosses, and you can bring his bodyguard, Panday Beck, who has a pretty mean blaster, but he really is only going to use it when he's nearby his buddy.
It's just another option. I know there was some conversation on the Dark Console. People didn't quite get them, and I know you were part of that conversation, and Stuart got in there and was kind of helping explain stuff and how those guys would work. So yeah, I mean, if you guys want to check them out, I think they're their cards are up already. You usually can find them down in the, I think, like you said, any faction's strategic area where they have the portals and stuff like that. I think that's where their cards are floating around.
Yeah, it should basically fall right behind each faction's Angry Mob and Civilian.
Okay. All right. Also, we want to mention real quick before we close out the show some of the cons that are coming up that Warcradle is going to be at. So one that's coming up pretty quickly here at the end of the month, September that is the Tabletop Gaming Live. That's over in the UK, the 29th and the 30th. And then the next thing that is kind of a bigger con for them is over here in the US in Philadelphia, and that's the PAX Unplugged show. That's November 30th through December 2nd. And quick note, me and Tom are planning on being there. And I talking to some of the other community members that are out in the Philly area, they kind of, I just noticed like this last week, Brian, in that Delaware area are exploding a little bit, which is kind of good news for Tom. He should get excited about that. And this PAX is right in their backyard, so you know.
Oh yeah, I think just knowing it's going to be at PAX has energized quite a few of them.
Yeah,
knowing that they're going to have the gang at their playground, you know.
Yeah,
so they're really excited.
Yeah, so we'll be there checking it out, and who knows, maybe we'll try and do something special. Stay tuned. But yeah, that kind of covers the, quickly news and stuff. And just to mention that Warcradle is still taking applications for the Warhost program. So if you guys are interested in, running demos and, basically showing off the game, if you love the game, you want more players to get into the game in your area, this is a perfect program for you. It's a volunteer program that you earn points for, and you can, get some little perks from Warcradle for doing the demos and tournaments and leagues and stuff like that. It should be under their blog section on the website if you want to check it out and fill out an application, and send it in, and they'll get back to you, and, you go from there. But I think that about covers all our news, Brian. Was there anything that you wanted to mention? Any hot topics that came off since the last time we recorded that is worth mentioning? I know both of us have been pretty active on Facebook Dark Council lately, it seemed. There's just...
Yeah, no, my week's been crazy. We did that last week. We did a emergency podcast on the Dystopian Age beta being released. I then spent most of this week taking a bit of a break from all the details I was throwing on my Infernal Investigations posse to finish my terrain. So I finished all my Red Oak terrain, and then out of nowhere, yesterday, on Memorial Day or Labor Day, one of the guys in my area was like, "Hey, anyone want a game on Labor Day?" I'm like, "Yes, I'll bring the terrain," because my terrain is all ready to go. So, and those pictures are obviously been put up, and the terrain did turn out pretty good, and we had a really good game, and
yeah,
the force was with me again because Jedrick and Furio had a really good game.
Using those hot dice?
And really, the dice, there was a spot. Okay, this is like an epic thing. So, Furio has already, I used 3 adventure cards, like 5 fortune, everything I had a limit plus card, 3 extra action points cards. And it was, I was just throwing all of this into Furio to try to take out the magenta alpha that attacked her. So, I was well within my grounds to retaliate, really. And she had just barely survived, right? So she was disordered and barely hung on, right? And then 2020 rushed the alpha from behind, put her disordered, or no, put her hunkered. So once because she avoided my charge with 2020, so she was hunkered. So when Furio the next turn, I activated her first. Okay. And I've been sitting on this limit card from the beginning. of the game. So I was ready. I had a +2 action point. I had another action point. I had this limit plus card. And so Furio, melee expert, I'm like, okay, she had a pretty good shot. Boom, started hitting, and it was like he was just rolling so good. And it was just, it was squeaker. And I was like, her regiment didn't get her through there, right? So I had already thrown in, extra action points to get her to attack 3 times, and and I was like, ugh. And I was like, no, got to do it. Limit +1, 2 more action points. More try, and at that point she was not only the alpha. I did get the alpha down to disordered, so it was like I just needed one more hit, and boom, he rolls a 1. So it was like I expended everything. So my boss, no origin, everyone's all thought it was like at the beginning of the round, the turn, I took out the boss. And it was just like he was rolling really well. It's just that last one was all I needed. The
clutch one, and that's what makes the game cinematic. Is that those kind of moments. Either the fantastic celebration highs, and then of course those lows, and it's just like, oh, if only.
2 more pictures in the pictures that I posted at this game, and it's towards the end, and he really has only got a couple of units left. And we're literally just, finishing around because he just didn't want to call it. And 2020 goes after his beta. Actually, no, it was Jedrick leaps off a building and lands behind his beta to put her down. His rolls, man, I roll a double 10s. And of course, I'm like cheering. There's this kid that's just watching this, and he's like cheering. And, Jeremy's like, oh, this sucks. And so he pulls out his dice and he rolls double 10s. And we both jump up and we're cheering. We high-fived over the we were celebrating, and I was, wait, I want to take a picture. And he's like, no, don't take a picture. I was like, no, we're going to take a picture. So I took a picture. And then he rolls in his 10s. I was like, oh, crap. Yeah, no, I got to take a picture of this, too.
Yeah, what's the likelihood that would ever happen again? 4 10s,
Huge swings. I'm like, yes, and he's like, no, and then he rolls, and then he goes, yes, and I'm like, no.
It's funny how dice can get you excited in a game, and this game is definitely one that can do that. When those dice are so critical, to get that you really need something. Oh,
right.
That's crazy.
I think we played the pick bones scenario, and it was just really weird that the way that set up, and it makes you get out into the middle.
Yeah.
And we had lined up the middle, basically the main street. So we had plenty of cover on opposite side, but most of the objectives were far away from the buildings.
Okay.
There was only like 2 that were kind of in cover, so you were protected if you went for them. And I immediately took off with Furo and Jedrick to take those 2. Well, that put me right into his line of building. So it looked like from the beginning, I'm like right in his face, and have taken the 2 easiest ones for him to get to. And so the game just stayed right there.
You were kind of asking for it then.
I did. I totally did. And of course, he immediately ran Magenta out and then got her stuck out there. So I was able to take her in the second turn. But it was a great game.
Yeah, if you guys are interested, you can check out Brian's. He posted pictures of this game on the Dark Council, and I actually shared it on our Facebook Blackhoof Saloon page too. And so you can see Brian's paintings of his buildings. I know a lot of people want ideas for buildings, and actually, hearing you talk about kind of like this battle report, I would love to hear other players' battle report. And we've been kind of seeing sprinklings of different people's games on Facebook through photos, and I've seen a couple people do write-ups and stuff, and I love seeing that, just that whole cinematic, story being told through people's games. So keep it up, guys. I love it. And I was getting ready to press a button on Brian to tell him to whoa. But no. I mean, it. You hear somebody tell a story like Brian's doing here, and it really gets you excited to play the game and have those moments. I mean, I can't tell you if I've ever seen somebody attack like that, Brian, and roll 2 10s and think, oh, yeah, I got this. And then the defender go ahead and match it. I don't think I've ever seen that. If anything, it's the opposite. My dice roll, and it's double snake eyes there for me. That's right. Usually how they go for me. But yeah, it's still, either way, it's very cinematic, and it's really neat to hear these stories. So keep sharing those stories, you guys. I think we kind of went on long enough for episode 5 here, Brian, didn't we?
Well, you know me, we can keep talking.
Yeah.
But I'm
once we get you going, it's hard to rein you in. But
got more stories.
Thank you guys for listening to episode 5 and liking, and I'm watching all you guys download, and some of you guys are starting to follow on the Facebook page, and we thank you. You guys can find us on the Facebook. It's at Blackhoof WWX Podcast, and feel free to send us emails at blackhoofsaloon@gmail.com. Hit us up if you have questions. Both me and Brian are always lurking on the Dark Council, trying to make our comments and, help people out. There's such an influx of new players in this game that it's awesome. It's just awesome how it's growing like a like a hex virus. I couldn't resist it, Brian.
Right.
But we will talk to you guys later. Keep in mind, while you're counting up your poker chips or whatever you're using to mark your fortune, and humming a bit of Salt and Pepper, to always ride with the sun at your back and roll those crits. This is Eric saying take it easy, and we'll talk to you later. Say bye, Brian.
Bye, Brian.
Later, guys.
Later, everybody.
Thanks for stopping by the Blackhoof Saloon, y'all. We hope you enjoyed your visit. Feel free to get a hold of us with comments or questions via the interweb, and shoot us a telegraph at blackhoofsaloon@gmail.com, or find us on the Facebook at Blackhoof WWX Podcast. Music provided for use by Ross Bugden and can be found at one of his YouTube channels, Ross Bugden Music or Ross Bugden Composer. Until your next visit, ride with the sun at your back, and always roll those crits.
Number 3333333.
The Count Dracula, number 3. 3 world existed models.
You know what? I
no
think
Romanians were harmed in the making of this podcast.
I think that's what we're going to need now. I think we need to sample the count going 3.
I did. Man. I saw that close up you did. I was like, yeah.
I mean that model's so nice. I might actually play as Brian.
If we ever redo a list, you're going to pick Brian. I mean, Jedrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just going to keep my babbling to a minimum.
That's what we have to do. We have to get a button that just goes, all right, that's enough, Brian.
You need to get an audio like horses neighing or a motorcycle engine revving or something, as a whoa, pal.
That'd be a good one. I need to look for a whoa. That's exactly what
we should get. You definitely need a whoa. Whoa.
You know what? I think we just got it. We're just babbling about games. How Brian wiped everybody off the board.
That's because he cheats.
Check those loaded dice.
Yeah, my first game I was using Warcradle dice, and man, I was getting too many ones. Man, I was just struggling. And then I finally just switched to a different set of dice, and that second game, I was on fire, man. So yeah, my loaded dice work great. Oh no, I didn't say
that. He's also got those cool dice that have 2 10s on them. So Tom, what do you think about focus? You get to +2 to shoot. Wait, it's more than that.
You get to add 2 to your stat that you're rolling dice.
The big yellow one's the sun.
Oh boy. I'm glad I'm still recording. Man, come on, Tom. Push it. Do 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 do.
Do 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 do.
Baby, baby, baby. Yeah, I'll admit I do have that on a CD somewhere, like Monsters of Rap from the 90s. Love that song.